Camping in the wilderness can be peaceful, but sometimes people experience things that make them wish they had never left home. This happened when I was camping alone in the Appalachian Mountains about 3 years ago. I'd hiked about 6 miles away from the nearest trailhead to get to a quiet clearing near a small creek. It was one of those places where once the sun goes down, the forest becomes completely silent. That night, around 2 a.m., something woke me up. At first I thought it was lightning, but then it happened again. A bright flash of light through my tent. I sat up in my sleeping bag confused. There wasn't a storm forecast and there hadn't been any thunder. Then it happened again. A quick burst of light, like a camera flash. My stomach immediately dropped. Someone was outside my tent. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly unzipped the door. When I stepped outside, the clearing looked completely empty. Just trees. And darkness. But as my eyes adjusted, I noticed something strange. Across the creek, maybe 40 feet away, I could see something hanging from a tree branch. It was a small digital camera, pointed directly at my tent. I walked over and picked it up. When I turned it on, the screen showed dozens of photos. Every single one was taken that night. Pictures of my tent, pictures of me setting up camp earlier in the evening, pictures of me sitting by the fire. Whoever took them had been watching me for hours. But the last photo is the one that still bothers me, because it was taken just minutes before I woke up. And in that photo, someone was standing right behind my tent. A few years ago, my cousin and I decided to go camping in a national forest in Colorado. We set up our tents near a small lake about a mile from the nearest road. The whole area was completely empty, or at least we thought it was. Around 1:30 in the morning, I woke up to a sound. Knocking. Soft knocking on the outside of my tent. At first, I thought it was my cousin messing with me. So I said his name. No response. Then the knocking happened again. 3 slow taps on the tent fabric. I unzipped the door and looked outside. Nobody was there. My cousin's tent was about 10 feet away and completely zipped up. The woods were silent. I went back to sleep thinking maybe I had imagined it. About 20 minutes later, it happened again. 3 knocks. This time, I sat up and listened. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Walking slowly between our tents. Back and forth. Back and forth. For almost 10 minutes. The next morning, we found footprints in the dirt between the tents. Bare footprints. But they were strange, because the toes were extremely long, almost like claws. My friends and I once went camping near a remote mountain lake in Oregon. There were 4 of us, and we were the only ones there. At least we thought we were. Until sometime around midnight. We were sitting around the fire when my friend pointed across the lake. On the other side, maybe a couple hundred yards away, we saw a light. Like someone had a lantern. At first we assumed it was another camper. But then something strange happened. The light suddenly disappeared. A few minutes later, it came back on. Closer to the water, then it went dark again. Then it appeared even closer. Like someone was slowly walking around the lake. But the weirdest part was, we never heard any footsteps. Or branches snapping. Just the light getting closer. Eventually it reached the opposite shoreline directly across from us. And in the glow of the lantern, we could finally see the person holding it. They were standing perfectly still, facing our campsite, watching us. After about 5 minutes, they slowly turned around. They walked back into the woods. The next morning, we paddled across the lake out of curiosity. There was no campsite, no footprints, no sign anyone had ever been there. This happened when I went winter camping with a friend in northern Minnesota. It was early January, and the entire forest was covered in fresh snow. The kind where you can see every footprint clearly. We hiked about 3 miles into the forest and set up our tent near a frozen lake. The night was incredibly quiet. Too quiet. Around midnight, we started hearing something walking outside the tent. Slow, crunching sounds in the snow. At first we assumed it was a deer, but the footsteps kept circling the tent, over and over, for nearly an hour. Eventually the sound stopped. In the morning, we opened the tent and checked the snow. There were footprints everywhere around our campsite. But something about them didn't make sense. There were 2 different sets. One set belonged to my friend, the other belonged to me. And they both led away from the tent. At some point during the night, both of us had apparently left the tent, but neither of us had any memory of it. One of the most disturbing things that's ever happened to me occurred during a solo camping trip in Utah. I'd set up my tent on a flat patch of dirt near a canyon wall. Everything was normal until the middle of the night. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to the feeling that something was moving beneath me. At first, I thought I was dreaming. But then, the ground under my sleeping pad shifted slightly, like something underneath the tent had moved. I froze and listened. Then it happened again. A slow, scraping sound, directly under the tent floor. I turned on my flashlight and pressed it against the ground. For a moment, I didn't see anything. Then, something pushed up against the fabric. A hand, a human hand, pressing upward from underneath the tent. I jumped up and ran out of the tent. The ground outside looked normal, but when I looked back at the tent, the floor fabric was slowly settling back down, like whatever had been underneath it was crawling away.